So today we're in Pound, Virginia to bring you a really interesting story, and it starts here, Red Fox Trail. So this has actually been used as a carriage route since the 1800s, probably before.
Normally, the victim in a case gets something or other, a house, a piece of land, a trail named after them. This one's the opposite.
Yeah.
I just say, just imagine this old trail back in the day. You're in a horse and buggy, and this is how you had to get from A to B. You had to come up here and take this old trail.
A bullet.
Yep. It's like a 223.
So why are we here, do you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked that. We're going to tell you the story of Killing Rock Massacre. And yes, it's as bad as it sounds. One of the most colorful chapters in the history of southeastern Kentucky and southwestern Virginia depicts the events surrounding the Killing Rock Massacre, which occurred on the south side of Pine Mountain in 1892. 5 members of the Ira Mullins party were ambushed and killed. And one of the people that did this, the main person that did this, was a man named Marshall Benton Taylor, and his nickname was Red Fox. Hence, Red Fox Trail. So let's go back a little bit and talk about how this started. It was Saturday morning, May 14th, 1892, at about 10 a.m. The Ira Mullins family comprised of Ira Mullins, his wife Louranza, their 14-year-old son John, Wilson Mullins, who married Ira's sister Jane, John Chappel, the wagon driver, Greenberry Harris, 15, a hired man, left the home of Wilson Mullins at the mouth of Cane Branch, which is now present-day Jenkins. So Jenkins wasn't actually established till about 20 years after this happened. Ira Mullins was the patriarch of the family. He was lying in the wagon on his blanket, partially propped up because he had become paralyzed from the injury which occurred during a previous fight with revenue officers. The Ira was a moonshiner. So many stories have been told as the events leading up to the day of the massacre, but the most credible story to me was told by Arminda Mindy Cantrell, daughter of Wilson and Jane Mullins, who was involved in the massacre. In the history of Pound, Virginia, she was quoted as saying that Ira Mullins owned a home in Kentucky but had decided to move to Pound, Virginia and open a small store there. One day, a man by the name of Doc Taylor, which is another nickname of Marshall, and 3 other men, Cal and Hennon Fleming, along with Henry Adams, came to Ira's house to visit. During their conversation, he told them about some money he had saved from his business ventures over the years. And to their disbelief, he had his wife, Louranza, open her purse and show them this money. It's a big mistake. It was a large amount of money, and money was scarce in those days. People would do a lot more for a lot less. They had about $1,000, which was a big chunk of change, life-changing. During the same night, someone came back to Ira's house and fired a gun through one of the windows. The bullet missed Ira, but caught the mattress on fire. After this happened, he became afraid, so he and his wife and their son, John Harrison, along with 2 hired hands, John and Greenberry, decided to go to Kentucky and stay a while with their in-laws. Wilson and Jane Mullins, who their daughter is the one that retold this story, is where they were going to stay. While they were there visiting, they decided it'd be best to move back to their old home place in Kentucky because they didn't feel safe anymore. Even though they were filled with great fear of going back to Virginia, they knew they had to go get their belongings. So they decided they would leave on Saturday and asked Wilson and Jane to go with them. So the wagon would creep up the hill very slowly, arriving at Pound Gap around noon, and it began its descent along the old Fincastle Trail towards Pound, Virginia. By about 1 p.m., the wagon approached 2 big rocks, about 1/2 mile from the gap. This is when gunshots rang out from an opening between 2 large rocks. Within a matter of minutes, 5 members of the party were killed, and so were both the horses. Wilson Mullins' wife Jane escaped, as did John Harrison Mullins, the son. It was a close call for John, whose suspenders, they said, were shot in two as he ran, and Jane, whose garments were pierced by bullet holes. I would say that is a close call. Although the men wore hoods, Jane still recognized the figures of the men who fired the shots. Jane ran all the way back to her home in Kentucky and cried, "Everyone's been killed." The family and neighbors made arrangements to recover the bodies and took them over to Wilson's house. There wasn't enough room inside, so some of the bodies were actually put on the porch. And then they built a big fire to keep flies away from the bodies. Can you imagine this scene, honestly? I mean, I just can't even. I mean, they knew these people. Anyways, Ira's sister Nancy was married to William Potter, who allowed the family to eventually bury the victims on the nearby Potter Cemetery, which we'll visit in this video. It's also called the Murdered Man Cemetery because it's supposed to have over 25 murdered or suspicious deaths buried there. So that should be interesting. Anyways, Jane was taken to Wise, Virginia jail, where she stayed for 6 months in protective custody because they were worried that she would get murdered because she could identify the murderers. The family was also robbed of their life savings, which was around $1,000 or more. Now, it was known that there was bad blood between Marshall and Ira Mullins. Now, Marshall had come from an honorable family. Early in life, he became interested in medicine, and more so herbal medicine, natural healing. He became a student of his uncle, Dr. Stallard of Lee County. Soon after finishing his apprenticeship, he joined the 64th Virginia Cavalry and served honorably for 4 years in the Civil War, which put off his career in medicine. He also became a preacher at the Methodist Church and later in the Baptist Church. He had flaming red hair and a beard that is why he became known as the Red Fox. He wore a black suit, and he had 2 Colt .45 pistols in his holsters, and he also carried a Winchester rifle in his saddle holster. He was a popular figure in the area. He delivered babies, treated the sick and wounded, he ministered to his patients. He was loved. Later in life, he became a deputy marshal for Wise County, and this seems to always be the undoing of a lot of people when they get into the law and they think they're just going to push their agenda on everyone else or save the world, you know, superhero mentality. Either way, this was no different for Red Fox. He immediately began a campaign against the many moonshiners in the mountains, and it was in this way that he met up with Ira Mullins from Kentucky. So he met Ira when Ira attempted to go through Gladeville, which is in Wise County, with a load of moonshine. Taylor and his posse attacked Mullins, and gunshots were exchanged. The wagon driver was killed, and several other people were injured in the battle before the whiskey was taken. As a result of this, there's bitter feelings and numerous threats. I also have read that this is where Ira became partially paralyzed, which I'm sure he wasn't real thrilled about. I should mention, people also thought that Red Fox was a little bit, for lack of better words, crazy. How pretty this building is. So this is the Wise County Courthouse. On September 5th, 1892, the authorities brought Dr. Taylor to trial. Taylor's counsel attempted to avoid the death sentence by pleading insanity, but the judge overruled it. He was found guilty and sentenced to die. The judge, H.S.K. Morrison, asked him if he had anything to say. Red Fox read trembling from the Bible. He admonished the judge that he would rise from the dead and that Christ would punish his persecutors. He spent the next year in jail. He was sentenced to hang October 27th, 1893. A newspaper account stated Dr. Marshall B. Taylor was hanged in Wise Courthouse. Virginia at 2:20 this afternoon, October 27th, 1893, for the murder of the Mullins family. 25 heavily armed men guarded the jail against surprise attacks. Taylor's request to be allowed to preach at his own funeral sermon was granted, and he spoke to a large crowd from the second-story window of this courthouse. He spoke for about an hour and a half, with a lot of it being from the chapters of Revelations. He seemed to have a major indifference about people that was listening and kind of the strangeness thereof. He also drank a lot of wine, it says, which is interesting. He was allowed to do that. He frequently choked back tears and sobs. He said that he had made all the confessions that he needed to make to Christ, and his salvation was assured. Doc Taylor's wife, Nancy Booth Taylor, was very faithful to her spouse. At his request, she made a white suit with her own hands and sewed the white hood to pull over his head when the time came. She stitched white stripes to bind his hands. On the hanging day, the white-robed prisoner was brought to the courthouse window at 10. His wife stood near, her solid black attire contrasting the clothes of her doomed husband. Taylor began to read the Bible. He launched into a 2-hour rambling discourse. He administered the sacrament to himself and his wife. The officers and bystanders refused to join them. The sheriff adjusted the white hood at 2:10. But Taylor was overcome with these preparations. He shook as if he had a fever, reeled, and fell heavily to the floor. He was quickly raised back up, the rope adjusted, and the trap sprung at 2:20. In 18 minutes, the physicians pronounced him dead from strangulation. So, strange side note. Family members of Marshall Taylor are certain that he was not executed that day at the courthouse. Many people swear that when his body dropped through the floor of the scaffold, he landed on the ground and was quickly released. It's said that Taylor was given a disguise to help him blend in with the other physicians who were boxed off in a portion under the scaffold to pronounce his body dead. Dr. Cherry, one of the physicians present at the time, stated that the attending doctors carted out an empty coffin and released it to the Taylor family, allowing Taylor free to flee to Missouri, where he's rumored to have lived the rest of his days. This theory is actually quite possible, considering that Dr. Taylor's mother lived there, and there's evidence that exists that his children and grandchildren then packed up and moved to Missouri from Virginia. So what do you think? Today, the place where he hung was actually in the parking lot, but over 100 years ago, he hung. This served as the final chapter in Dr. Marshall B. Taylor's life. So Marshall B. Taylor, aka Red Fox, is somewhere here.
Somewhere.
These thousands of graves. It's a cool little city though. It's very pretty and quaint.
Yeah.
So I did see a Marshall down here, but I don't think that's it.
I'll go look.
It's a block. I found him. What do you know? All these graves drawn right to him. So this is the final place, Marshall Benton Taylor. Why he actually did the killings, we'll never know, but the ending was still the same. Everybody died. So I wonder if his wife is buried next to him. There's a Hattie Sailor Taylor, 1862-1936, erected by UDC Sawyer Lee chapter. Some interesting stones here, huh? So we're in Jenkins, Kentucky, at what they call the Murdered Men Cemetery, or Potter Cemetery. And this is where the final resting place of the Mullins and Company is buried.
Look at this old stonework. It looks wild, don't it?
So this is Ira Mullins. Ira was shot multiple times in the head, shoulders, and thighs. His wife, Louranza, was shot in the breast and knees. John Chappell was shot 6 times. Greenberry Harris, who was only 15, and Wilson were shot through the heart.
All the same date kind of brings it home, don't it?
The outlaws showed no mercy on the unarmed travelers, even killing the horses, and their life savings was taken. So using the excuse for them being moonshiners, I don't buy it. Either way, this ended badly for everybody. There's 5 people buried here, and these are real people. It's easy to read the story, but their lives were ended. And you can even see the ripples right here. The human beings whose lives were cut short.
You can see them all in a row.
And Red Fox also lost his life, so nothing was gained from this. So this is where their story ends.
Great day to be out. Thank you guys all for watching. We very much appreciate you, and you guys have a great day, and we'll see you the next time on the Hillbilly Files.